Well, hello and a very warm welcome back. I hope you had a chance for a quick cup of tea and ready to get going for our next session. And it is my great pleasure to introduce now our industry keynote speaker, Bentley's chairman and CEO, Adrian Hallmark. Adrian, very good morning to you.
Good morning. Hi, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Delighted to have you with us. Adrian, of course, there are a few areas that you and I want to discuss, but if you watching want to submit any questions for me to put to Adrian on your behalf, please do. I'm sure you've worked out how to do it so far on the platform that you're watching us on, and I will keep an eye on my trusty iPad in a few minutes' time to see what questions you have. But of course, I have plenty to kick us off. Adrian, first of all, just a quick report from you. How are things at Crew as we come out of the pandemic? How have you been coping?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. But yeah, we're doing okay. I think we've been through our three crises, or we're going through the third. We went through the Brexit prep, through COVID, and we kept the company safe and the company running during that critical period. And now we've navigated the semiconductor and now transport issues that we're all facing. So every day is exciting. You never know what's coming around the corner next. But so far, we're going well. Sales are up. We did a lot of work to restructure the business during COVID, as well as define a new strategy for the company. So our sales are up about 40% year on year, and our costs are down about a quarter. So if you add all of that together, we're making record profits, cash, but more importantly, the order income rate is even greater than the sales rate. So we're building a solid business. And as we move the product range towards electrification, it sets us up beautifully for this 2030 vision of carbon neutrality for the company in the so-called Beyond 100 strategy.
Adrian, you mentioned electrification just there, and of course this has come up numerous times already this morning. We've been chatting with lots of different players in this industry sector, but if you had a wish list of help from policymakers to help you with your electrification ambition, what would that wish list look like?
But not in priority order. There are three things that are really important to us. One is trade deals. The other is battery infrastructure in the UK, and the third is charging infrastructure in the UK. If I can start with trade deals, clearly we've made a big, bold decision as a company, but so has the country, to go for a ban of ICEs by 2030. Now, obviously today, we make all of our cars in the UK and plan to do so for a long time, but we export 85% of what we build. And if those markets where we sell our current 12-cylinder engine cars don't treat BEVs the same way as the UK does, then we could actually be turning off demand in key markets. So we would advocate trade deals as part of the future need to be orientated about green deals and making BEVs the default choice for customers in our sector. So that's something that we definitely look for. And the rules of origin issues that derive from this are also pretty critical. They're quite boring and they're very detailed, but in simple terms, by 2027, even though we have a trade deal with the European Union, ICE engines will be more favourable to sell than BEVs because of the rules of origin. A battery for an equivalent car is about 3 to 5 times the cost of the engine. And because of those materials coming from all over the world and difficult to source in Europe, and then fully make in Europe or the UK, it puts a new challenge to us beyond even trade deals. So rules of origin, green trade deals in that space, those are the key things. Charging infrastructure, we all know the issues. I've had 2 cars in sequence, electric vehicles. 40% of people allegedly can't charge at home because they don't have off-street parking, etc. And the intercity charging networks just aren't reliable. They're either broken, you need another app with a new password and a new account every time you go somewhere, or you have problems in being able to pay because they don't accept credit cards or debit cards. So interoperability and mandating both the power companies and charging companies to put the infrastructure in place so that we can go city to city without stress. Then the driving range is less of an issue. I think the third point though is, battery infrastructure, because the UK OEMs are quite complicated. We're all having different size of cars in different price segments with different cell technologies. And the challenge is to try and find a common denominator. And we probably can't. So it needs external investment and big players. Today, we export 1 million engines more than we export cars. So why can't that be the same with batteries? Make UK a battery centre. And to do that, you need green energy to make the batteries, because we know that battery production emits more CO2 than making an engine, although over the life of the vehicle, it neutralises. So make UK a safe haven, the go-to place for battery production.
I want to pick you up before we talk more about trade deals and so on, just about the recharging infrastructure, because it's something that I've spoken to many businesses about, I've spoken to many consumers about, I've spoken to many politicians and policymakers about, and there always seems to be frustration within this area of people saying it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault. Whose fault is it, from where you sit, that we have such bad infrastructure, and why do other countries seem to be better at it?
We don't have bad infrastructure. There's plenty of occasions where you can drive past charging centres and they're empty. The challenge is that we're trying to hit two moving targets at the same time. So rather than use the word fault, I would replace it with where's the plan? The word plan is more important. So we can see the adoption of PHEVs, plug-in power and full BEVs is going faster than some predicted. And the standoff is any company that wants to put charging infrastructure in place, you don't want to do it too long before you get the customers. So it needs this bridging. So you need to create excess capacity for a period so that you can create a pull towards electric vehicles. And as soon as people have no issues or stress with charging cars, the adoption rates will go up higher, because that's one of the big blockers today. So not fault, but plan together.
Right, got it. We need a plan, but I'll stop trying to apportion blame in this game. But actually, I am one of those people that you talked about, the 40%. I live in a typical, London terraced street. No off-street parking, no chance for me to do my bit and invest in an electric car. So I have great sympathy with the problems with the market. Let's move on to clearly the importance of an effective TCA between the UK and the EU is critical. That's obvious, but what are your priorities when you're thinking about that issue?
I think when I look at the trade deal that we already have, from our perspective, we've employed about 6 more people. It costs us a few million per year more to administer our business with Europe. And we've got a warehouse that we never expected to need for extra stock, just in case. So if you take the big picture, it's a few millions out of a few billion turnover. So it's not decisive, i.e. the trade deal works today. But if I look forward, it's like we've got married, but now we've got a whole life together. And that's going to take a lot of discussion and constant problem solving and goal setting. So from my point of view, we got Brexit done, but now let's get the relationship working. And there are 4 things that I think are important. The first one I've already mentioned is that it's rules of origin. If we don't find a way of managing this burden of the cost of the battery within the total car and how it distorts the origin of the vehicle from a source point of view, that will just create tariffs. So we solve one tariff problem, but we get another one through an indirect process called rules of origin. So that's number 1. Second would be to smooth customs processes. To digitize customs processes would be third, and then where legally possible, make the data exchange much more fluid and efficient. And if we can get those things working, it reduces our admin burden, which isn't killing us, but it would be nice to do less, similar to how we did before, but make it more predictable and more manageable. But rules of origin, rules of origin, rules of origin are the 3 priorities.
Yeah, I can see that your priority is rules of origin, Adrian. Don't call me perceptive for nothing. But I think what you're saying there is it is very clear also about keeping that relationship alive, if you like. Like any good marriage or relationship, you need to keep working at it, and maybe occasionally you need to go and have some counselling or some therapy to make sure that relationship isn't breaking down. And I'm sure that particular relationship will need a bit of that in the coming years as well. Looking further afield, you've already mentioned the vast proportion of your sales are export sales. I think you said 85%. So what other trade deals are important to you?
Now, again, if we look at the world, first of all, we don't have trade deals with any other of the major markets. So US and China represent about 45% of our sales today. You'll probably be aware that the US tariff is 2.5%. So even if that were removed with a trade deal, it doesn't open up significant opportunity for British exporters in America with normal price to cost elasticity. But not making it worse would be the first priority in the US. But if we could get a trade deal, that would be great. Same with China. They do have a tariff going in. We still do very well in China. It's an equal biggest market. So eliminating that tariff would be beneficial. But the two things that are really important beyond tariffs are, again, recognizing BEVs as tariff-free in the future. There's no point us selling them into those markets and having more tariffs applied and therefore suppressing demand for the cleaner technologies. So any deal that we should do should be based around BEVs and green policy, as well as dealing with any tariffs for the automotive industry. And then last but not least, I have to say yet again, rules of origin, because the same principle applies there, although the numbers and the values could be different. We need the same deal and it needs to be reciprocal.
And can I ask you about skills? Because we've already heard a few times today from various people saying, which we hear it across the board in pretty much every sector at the moment, real problems filling the places, finding the workers. There have been calls already this morning for extra visa waivers to fill those empty spaces. Is that something that Bentley has a problem with, or do you manage to find all your skilled workers?
We're very fortunate that so far we have no major issues. There are certain specialisms as we move towards electrification and autonomous capability and vehicle operating systems where we need more support. But it's tens of people, not hundreds, and it doesn't stop our core business today. So we're very fortunate that we can operate fully, even in this unpredictable period.
That doesn't seem to be a problem for you in the here and now. Let's hope it continues in that way. Just a final question before I open up to questions from our audience, and I can see that we've already had some for you, Adrian. But finally, what other competitive barriers do you see in those markets around the world?
Again, I'll try and phrase it positively first and then give you the dark side second. I think if you look at luxury taxes as an example, even though European Union is a union, you've got a significant disparity between, let's say, Norway, Austria and Netherlands in one cluster and Germany in the other. So in Norway, Austria and Netherlands, you see between 50 and 75% on top luxury and CO2 taxes before VAT is added. And what this does and could do is, again, suppress the demand for BEVs in the luxury sector if these things aren't neutralized. But if you look on the positive side, Tesla's success in Norway, as well as being first mover, was largely driven by the tax rebates that customers could get from buying an electric vehicle, which brought them in line or even cheaper than buying a regular car from a one-off acquisition cost. So luxury taxes could be okay, but as long as BEVs and new energy vehicles are exempted from those punitive taxes, because it almost doubles the cost of our cars in certain markets.
Doesn't make sense at all. I'm going to open up to questions. Just a final reminder, you've got about 5 minutes. We've got 5 minutes left with Adrian. So if you've got a question that you want him to answer, send it through to me now. Interesting question here. Is there a space, says this question, Adrian, on the world stage for a Britain that's both a volume and specialist manufacturer? Can we be both? Can we be everything to all men?
As a country, there's no reason why, if we look around the world, why we can't be more productive and be a volume manufacturer as well as a specialist manufacturer. I think if I start with the sector I know best, there are 6 luxury brands allegedly on earth. 4 of them are based in the UK in the automotive sector, with McLaren, Aston, Rolls and Dust. pure luxury brands price-wise, and the others are in Italy. So we know we can do luxury, and Britain has the largest share of luxury car production in the world. So it's a segment that we should protect. And then you look at the premium sector, and we're really strong in the JLR space as well. But if I look around the world, if there's countries like Germany and France that have equal or higher costs to the UK for operating, and they can make a success out of volume products, then why can't the UK? There's no law of physics that says we can't. It's about economics.
And is it as well as about economics? Obviously, so much is made out of our productivity levels in comparison to other countries, and a lot of that obviously either comes down to workforce or investment in technology. It's a very hot topic at the moment, but how do you judge? And obviously, we're not talking about Bentley here. We're talking about the rest of the industry. What's your take on that?
I think if you just look at the productivity rankings across Europe, let's say we're not at the top, and the most productive economies, and especially the most productive automotive businesses, tend to be where it's more expensive to operate. Why is that the case? Because they then automate more and make it more cost effective in the long run. So I think the investment in automation to rapidly improve productivity is the key to making volume manufacturing working in a high cost environment, including in the UK.
More tax breaks for that sort of investment. Obviously, we've seen a bit of that at the moment, but they're short term and they're going to end quite soon.
Well, we've thought about this, and we would definitely support a move to, in the period, again, it comes back to a plan. If we say take 2030 as a deadline, and we all want to be carbon neutral and fully electrified by then, what could be done with R&D tax credits, expanding the scope of them, not just to technologies, for green transformation or for green investment, just for that period to help with the pre-revenue cash flow phase. And if that could be done, and I know there's a lot of demands on government, they're giving out more money than they're getting at the moment. But that, if we're really serious about 2030, that could be one of the levers to really accelerate investment.
Yeah. Great question here from Jack Hunsley, Automotive World. Jack says, with UK-based gigafactories still lacking and looking likely to struggle to compete with the number of facilities in Asia and on the continent, could we see, says Jack, Bentley move production abroad if the UK doesn't close that gap?
No, not for that reason. There's 1,000 others that Jack could have put to me. But from a battery point of view, being very selfish, we've already got a plan A. So for our volume of cars, we can and we would import them from continental Europe. If there were a factory in the UK that could satisfy our needs on cost, performance, and of course on competitive offering technology-wise, then of course we could consider that. But as I mentioned earlier, the diversity of types of products that are built in the UK today, the different cell formats, it's very difficult to get critical mass of a gigafactory with 7 or 8 manufacturers, all with different needs. You need a unified cell strategy, as some of our competitors have done, and we as a group are doing. And it needs to be, UK needs to be part of a global network for some of these players.
I'm going to come back to your favourite phrase of the morning, Adrian, rules of origin. Rules of origin, clear concern for yourself and for Bentley. Could rules of origin, could this and will this be overcome by increasing the level of local sourcing? Is that the answer?
Yes and no. I think the battery, if you took the cost of a battery in the car, I won't give you numbers, but in terms of pounds or euros, but the powertrain would be 15 to 20% the value of a car. If you took that out of any given vehicle and put a battery in, the battery is 3 to 5 times the cost of that old powertrain. So the amount that you have to compensate with the rest of the car in terms of sourcing locally is almost impossible, because the battery is so expensive as a component of the vehicle itself. So of course we seek to secure supply in the UK wherever we can, where it's competitive. But this rules of origin challenge is really driven by batteries, not by the rest of the components on the car. It's a game changer, and it needs to be addressed accordingly.
Squeeze in one final rules of origin question. It's turned into your specialist subject. What do you consider, says this question, to be the best rule of origin for UK cars? Could a direct change in tariff classification rules without a regional value content rule work?
It could, because it's simplistic and it's a one-off factor. But if you want to incentivise more local sourcing, then it could also be a phased-in approach where you discount the value of the battery or take the value of the car without the battery and then phase in that value over a 5-10 year period or something. So we've got different ideas and we're open to discuss those, as we are already with government. But I think either a single fixed tariff or a graduated transition, if you want to create dynamism, those could be two methods that we could use.
Well, that is all I've got time for. But I'm so grateful to you, Adrian, for answering so many of my questions, but also, more importantly, probably answering so many of other people's questions. And we really did cover a wide range. And of course, good luck with Bentley, Adrian. Thank you so much. OK, we're going to be moving on now to the SMMT.